Trauma is the biological phenomena, the biological message that one is in a sociopathic environment, as demonstrated by chronic exposure to life-threatening, to identity-threatening dynamics of force that are preventable, but that the reptiles around one are allowing or causing. So when your parents are a source of trauma and other parents stand by and do not protect you from trauma, your body understands that you are in a reptilian environment where the law of mass, which is might makes right, is being utilized against children because the giants can. It's not right, it's not good, it's because they can. Now, there's a lot of different cover stories for all of that abuse, but the body and the psyche of a child understands that they are in a reptilian cult. When the big ones abuse and use their superior force in a dependent, helpless context to unfairly exploit their children for expediency, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's financial abuse, whether it's passing off the disowned emotions that the parents don't want to deal with, so they ask the child to deal with it, whether it's blaming the child for things rather than owning the responsibility of an adult to first decide to have children and secondly to take care of them. So the goal is to eliminate 90% of the trauma caused by shame. So that's a 10x improvement. Eliminate 100% of the trauma caused by basic survival needs not being met. Trauma is a communication through the body that one's identity is in jeopardy, that one's physical, emotional, mental identity may not survive due to violation, not attunement, not growth, not preference, but violation. And so one of the key aspects is the guarantee that one's physical needs and one's emotional needs and one's mental needs will be met. Maslow outlines the hierarchy of survival, security, love and belonging, self-esteem, and then in my twist, developing one's personal gifts, bringing them abundantly into the world and becoming part of something bigger than ourselves. So this is a big journey that in the larger cult is not assured. As an American, you have zero assurance that you will not die of poverty, die of starvation. You have zero security that you will be secure for the rest of your life. There are many Americans that do not have a single friend and have no idea where and how to go about getting one, and nobody takes any interest in this. It's like, oh, Americans are struggling at survival level. Well, that's fine. You're an individual. We create the dysfunctional statistics as a cult, and then we hand them to minorities to deal with, and then you deal with them. So there's no real assurance in that. So by simply saying that there will be a safe, legal place to sleep for every community member, it may be a tent, maybe a yurt, doesn't matter. It's a safe, legal place to sleep. There will be fresh, organic food for every community member. Doesn't matter you lose your job, doesn't matter you get sick. You will have fresh, healthy, organic food. You will have love and belonging. If you are a community member, as demonstrated by participating in the cult practices of love and belonging, to see and be seen, use of the app, etc., you will be known and cared about. And you will have the chance to know and care about others. And the opportunity to learn to think, just being in a 10x thinking community, provides the framework for an individual when and as they are ready, as they move into adulthood, to develop their own ideals, to develop their values, to develop their principles, and to practice the art of living and growing into those principles. And that is a community practice. That's part of the education, that this is a human need. You will have the ability to develop your gifts and discover what they are, and to become part of something bigger than yourself. So when those needs are guaranteed, when they're the default in the community, and which holds itself accountable for meeting the needs of its children, its elderly, you eliminate 100% of that particular trauma. Create a 100% trauma-literate community. So I was 40 before I understood what trauma was, what PTSD was, before I understood that it was biological rather than psychological, and that competent trauma techniques needed to be applied to deal with trauma. So I had spent $140,000 on various therapies before a stranger in a cafe told me what none of 40 healers, therapists, and practitioners thought to mention. Do you know what trauma is? Looks like you've got some traumatic symptoms. Here's what it is. Here's what to do about it. Here's who to see about it. This is so basic, and it changes lives. So every community member, as part of education, as part of participation, will be trauma literate. And because this is deliberately designed as a trauma-resistant community and a traumatic healing community, with the most powerful app on the planet of measuring and engaging in 10x living, we can create an environment. We can create a possibility that can be tracked and measured. So we can export trauma expertise to the larger culture as one of our greatest services. So the strategy: teach trauma to every 6-year-old and older to ensure trauma fluency by age 12. Ensure that everyone's needs are met. Design to reduce the following trauma: crime, cameras in public spaces, fencing around the perimeter, the help app button if anyone is in panic can help to just click panic. Helps on some practical levels. Having an accident and no one responds, the community environment is far, if someone's doing poorly or losing their eyesight, everyone knows about it. So the risks around nobody knowing what's going on, which can happen in the average American home quite easily, is severely, reduced. Then you've got transportation, with all of the transportation occurring within the community, 70% less driving. You have less traumatic risk on that area. Better, healthier cultures lead to better health. You have less health crisis. And the independent grid reserve sense and the resilience of being independent and off-grid just makes that, a lot easier as well. Protocols, here's a little bit of a stretch, brainstorming, but anyone wearing a Fitbit type device can correlate heart rate to trauma levels and set an alert to, so that if someone's heart rate reaches a certain point, the community gets an alert: where's their location, what's going on. In the event anyone observes trauma inside or out, they can press the trauma button on the community app to ascertain trauma levels. Are you present in your body? Are you aware of your feelings? Are you able to look at all data without going into overwhelm and addictive coping mechanisms? Are you in the rational or the fight, flight, freeze part of your brain? The response to trauma, immediately remove all stimuli if possible. Secure and advocate, have the person have the safest person in the community immediately by their side. This person's primary role is to mitigate trauma. This person offers help and is asked for. The person in trauma selects people in advance who they feel safe with being around in a traumatic situation, so that when the trauma button presses, there may be, like if one person is in the middle of an important meeting with a client and there are 3 people that are the safe people, it's likely that one of them would be available. However, it's also very important in a 10X community that we put commercial enterprises second to the well-being of community members. It is completely inexcusable in an intelligent cult to have people abandon one another because they're making money for a client. Trauma comes first. We need help for that. In the event the trauma button is pressed, one or more of the people on the short list start responding and locating the person on site via GPS. When 2 or more people are holding space and the person feels safe, the alert is turned off and the rest of the community can go back to business. And so there's a lot of more detail. I would suggest reading through this and making suggestions and developing this. But the goal of reducing 90% of the most overwhelming, terrifying, painful events of a person's life is within the grasp of a competent recipe along these lines.